Welcome, and thanks for joining us at the Grown-Ups Table. I'm Dave Patterson.
And I'm Dylan DeQuano. This is the podcast where we talk to you about the shit you never learned, but you probably should have. So today we've got our good friend, Karl Kwiatkowski, very good Polish-Canadian man, here to talk to us about board games. But we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, it's hard to justify how someone is a board games expert, but trust us when we say Karl is.
Yeah, I don't know that he competes internationally necessarily, or that he's like a world-renowned name. I don't even know if you could look him up on Google and
is there
his
anybody
name.
You can look up for that?
I don't know.
I'm going to regret saying that.
There probably are, and people are going to come at us. But if you've ever been to his house before and you go up to the upstairs of his room, there are walls full of board games. He knows what's up when it comes to this stuff. But we'll get into that once he joins us in a little bit.
So what you been working on this week, Dylan?
Well, Emily, my wife, she ordered two lazy Susans for the refrigerator, spice racks, and spice bottles. And I spent part of the day today cleaning out the fridge, getting rid of some stuff that probably shouldn't have been in there for the past 3 years. Probably shouldn't have made it to the last two moves, but somehow
I was going to
did.
say, I know for a fact I helped you move within the last 1 year.
Yeah.
So if you're telling me there's stuff in the fridge past that, that's mildly concerning.
Well, I just didn't think that it was bad yet. Like it's coleslaw dressing, not coleslaw, but coleslaw dressing. And you're like, I just bought it last summer. I assume it has a longer shelf life. It's just like mayo. No, it's not as long as you think. So,
man, as somebody who lives alone, salad dressing is a hard thing to keep stocked on.
Hard to keep stocked on?
Yeah, because it goes bad. Like it's hard to go through a bottle of salad dressing in time.
Yeah. Well, that's our problem too. Also, just as people who don't particularly like eating salad very much, that's another big factor. But then in terms of spices, that was a big undertaking. Our spice rack was just messy. It was all those store-bought spice bottles of all different shapes and sizes.
The little Ziploc bags that never open, right?
Those, yes. The Ziploc bags that you don't close them and then they spill everywhere, just in a basket. And it was a disaster. So now it's perfectly aligned and just easier access for everything. Lazy Susans in the fridge for those jams, for the peanut butter, just to turn them around.
Oh, you got them in the fridge. Shit.
In the fridge, so you don't have to like try to dig in the back, because then you can just turn it around and it's at the front now. That's pretty much what I've been working on. Nothing super exciting, but it's made an impact. How about you? Anything new for you?
I mean, I haven't put Lazy Susans in my fridge. That sounds genius, but been playing around with the lawn, trying to get ready for the spring. It's a little too early to do too much yet, but finally got it cut this week. Maybe we should say like the month once in a while.
Yeah, like we're recording this here in mid-April.
Remembered once again that when you have a lawnmower older than you, it takes a little work to get her going.
Yeah.
First time of the year. But grass is cut, put some seed down, some fertilizer down, trying to find some ways to protect areas that my dog likes to run on.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, some guy was just walking down the street with a giant push aeration machine today, like a big, huge mechanical one. And I was just taking the dog for a walk, and I was like, I saw him knocking on someone else's door, but I could tell it was a lawn thing. And I was like, I need some lawn stuff done because I haven't done anything to this lawn yet, and it needs some work.
Yeah.
And he offered to aerate the lawn front and back, $65. I was like, yeah, man, do it right now. And I was taking my skateboard with me, and he busted out a kickflip. So I was like, I can trust this guy. He knows how to kickflip. So.
Where do you live?
I live in Hamilton.
Sounds a little Sesame Street-ish now.
It was pretty awesome. He's like, so you skateboard? I'm like, yeah, right. I try, but I'm not good. And he's like, here, let me. Do you mind if I do a kickflip? And I'm like, I do not mind. And he did an ollie, did a shove it, did a kickflip. And I was like, You can aerate my lawn. Go for it.
I would actually I'm curious now. I would love to do a poll of people who aerate lawns for money. How many of them can do a kickflip? Like,
I'm going to guess it's a small percentage.
I don't know, man. I think it might be higher than you think.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, the guy was pretty young. I don't know how old. He looked like he was maybe like 18, 19. Should have asked him if he wanted to come on the podcast sometime.
There you go. Yeah.
Talk about lawn maintenance.
No, not even lawn maintenance. We're just going to discuss aeration.
Kickflips. Oh, just okay.
One of these days, we will get on the same page with this shit.
Maybe we should get a skater on here, because haven't you always wanted to learn how to do a kickflip, Dave? That was something you never learned how to do. I guarantee it.
No, you're absolutely right. I never learned how to do a kickflip. You are 1 for 2.
I know how to do a kickflip. Can I do one? No. I know the mechanics. Can I personally pull one off? Not yet. This summer, though.
There's a lot of shit I could say that about.
Yeah.
Like, I understand how Tom Brady throws a football, but I don't have 7 Super Bowl rings.
Yeah. I understand the concept of a saucer pass. Can I do a nice saucy pass over to Brandon? No, not once. Just fall on my face. I don't fall on my face. I'm an okay skater, just not a good stick handler.
Poor Brandon.
Yeah, poor guy. Anyway, so we got Karl on. He'll be joining us shortly. What do you want to learn about board games? We've all played board games before, but
yeah,
in modern society, what's the significance of board games?
Well, I think one of the things that I want to discuss more is how to find a board game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's so many out there now. And I think, like, I like to think I'm somebody who knows a decent amount of board games. I certainly have tastes in them, and there are things I prefer and things I don't. Mm-hmm. So how do you find a game in a store full of them and you know you're going to like that one? Like, what does Karl look for when he's trying to pick the next one to buy?
Yeah. And like, I'm no board game expert by any means, but like, I feel like growing up, me and all my friends all had the same board games that our parents had, like Monopoly, The Game of Life, Scrabble,
Risk.
Battleship, Risk, like all this kind of standards. But then in the last like 10, 15 years, there's kind of been a renaissance of new games. And I know that other games have obviously come out in that time, and like stuff like Catan has been around since the 80s.
Yeah.
I don't know when it made its way over to like North America. I don't know if it like just started out in Germany for years. Maybe Karl will know. But there are so many board games now. If you go into a specialty board game shop, you're just like kind of overwhelmed on what's all out there. How do you pick one? Do you have to do research before? I guess it all probably depends on a lot of different factors.
And some of them aren't cheap either. Like, you hate to drop like $60, $70 on something
game
that you're going to play once and hate.
Exactly. Like, there's this game, I played it with some friends when we were camping. It's called Mysterium. Maybe you were at that camping trip.
I think I might have been, but I think I might have been past the point of inebriation to learn a new board game at that time.
Yeah. Well, anyways, like, it was a sick game. It's so fun. To me, it felt like a mix between Clue, but not really. And then, like, it was like really ethereal and like abstract. And it was like there's a person who's a ghost and they try to explain. Anyways, it's a really hard game to explain, but playing it is really cool. And we're like, okay, cool. This is an awesome game. Let's go check it out. It was like $100.
Yeah.
I get why also after playing the game, it's beautiful. There's so many different cards. They all look like they're like hand-drawn, like beautiful art pieces on everyone. So maybe it just cost a lot to produce the game. The concept is fairly simple once you get going, but it's kind of a lot of money to drop a game on if you don't know how to play it.
Exactly. And if some of those games, they get complicated to a point where it's hard to just pull it off when you have friends there.
Exactly.
Like, you can't always just sit people down and have a 25-minute rules lesson
Yeah, for sure. Like you got to have the right group of people there who either want to do that or they're just like, no, I want to play a board game I already know. Let's play like Go Fish. You're like, okay, that's a stupid game. I don't want to play that.
Yeah. And that's something I want to talk to Karl about too, is how to, because he's been really good in the past with us of picking a game for a room of people and seeming to know what's going to work.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that's kind of a unique knowledge that I don't have.
Yeah, for sure. That's the thing, is you have to play a lot of these games to know which ones are going to work for the group. Mm-hmm. Back to this Mysterium game, when we saw the price tag, we're like, I don't know if we want to spend that money on this game right now. Like, how often are we going to play it? So we bought a different one called Beyond Baker Street because the guy at the store said, it's kind of similar in concept and what you do and like how you figure out the game. We bought it. We opened it up with no idea how to play. Look at the rule book. It's huge. We didn't want to figure it out. We never played it. I haven't played the game. I've owned it for 3 years. And
I think maybe if we have Karl back a second time, which we should see how the first time goes before making those plans.
He might suck.
Yeah. If we do have him back a second time, maybe we should just learn that game for a whole episode.
That'd be cool.
I mean, for the three of us, it would probably suck for our listeners.
Yeah, this is a very bad listening experience. We could just have him to games night.
But, you know, it's great that we're like a brand new podcast and we're already coming up with ideas that isolate our listeners from the experience.
Exactly. That's what it's all about. It's all about
to drive that wedge.
Make the listener feel unwelcome, like they don't really know what's going on, like they can't participate. Those are what like all my favorite radio shows do.
Yeah, and we got to make lots of visual references to stuff.
Yeah, like, oh, this is so funny. Can you guys all see this on camera? Yeah, totally. Oh, looks like Karl's joining. All righty, we got Karl here with us. How you doing, Karl?
Good, man. I noticed you didn't say the last name, though.
Karl Kwiatkowski.
Ooh,
you missed the first 10 minutes where we practiced.
Did I nail it, though? Was there any part of that was incorrect?
The latter part. I'm not going to even correct you, though. You did great, man.
Please do it. I want to know.
Kwiatkowski.
Kwiatkowski.
Much better.
Okay. You're more Polish sounding.
Yeah.
I just didn't put on the accent. I just like Canadianized like Kwiatkowski.
Oh, crap. No. The Canadian is like Kwiatkowski. You know?
Kwiatkowski. Karl Kwiatkowski. Yeah.
All right, Karl, what are we drinking tonight?
All right, I got my Tiskie ready. This is a Polish beer that I can say genuinely Polish people love. Honestly, I'm not like a big beer drinker. Shit, this is all in Polish. I couldn't even tell you if it's a lager. You could probably tell me. What type of beer am I drinking, Dave?
I believe it is a lager.
It's a lager.
Okay. Yeah, I just found out recently that Żywiec is a lager too, and I did not know that.
Well, so. I hate to break it to you, Karl. I went to the LCBO. I could not find a Tiskie at the one that I was at. So bitch. I did buy a Żywiec.
Awesome.
But I also bought a Tatra.
Oh, Tatra. Yeah.
Tatra. I can say, though, I've been to the Tiskie Brewery, the Żywiec Brewery, and I've been to the Tatra Mountains in Poland, but not the
Tatra.
brewery.
Yeah, totally. I was about to educate you, but you know your shit.
Yeah. Oh, and this is also canned and brewed at Żywiec Brewery in Poland, this Tatra one. So I guess it's just a different brand. So,
yeah.
Have you had either of these, Karl?
I'm Polish. I've had all of them at some point.
Which one should I have of the two? I'm not going to have both likely, but I might.
Żywiec.
Żywiec. All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's crack them.
And Dave, you had no problems procuring a Tiskie?
I had no problems at all.
Beaut.
Grocery store beer.
It actually is. They got it in the Sobeys here.
Yeah, I went to Zayre's and found it there. Yeah. Surprisingly good selection.
Yeah. I won't go on about this, but yeah.
Go on about it.
No, I was just going to say the Sobeys has like way more beer than I even knew existed.
Yeah,
I'm not a beer drinker.
I'm always surprised, like the Zayre's by me, and I think they probably have similar suppliers, but the selection there for craft beer is better than the LCBO.
I believe it. Like, honestly, the racks are full up
Yeah, I'm always shocked by that.
Yeah, they do a pretty good job. I've even seen, I'm in Hamilton, and I've seen Furnace Room Brewery make its way out this way, which is from Georgetown, and like pretty small scale. At least 2 years ago, it was like not even in production.
Is that the brewery that you guys tricked me into by baiting me by saying there were board games there?
Yes.
I forgot about that. Like 2 weeks before COVID.
There were board games there. There was Jenga.
What did we play? We played like 3-way chess, didn't we?
It was designed for 4 players. Three-weighted.
We didn't know. We thought that they had a more extensive supply of board games,
You
but
liar. You knew what you were doing.
clearly didn't make the cut for you. So
I'm not trying to sound elitist, all right? But like,
I mean, we did invite you on a podcast to talk about board games, so you get to sound a little elitist today.
yeah, please.
You kind of have free range on that.
I'll try not to sound too douchey.
What do you guys think of the beer, though, before we get into the board games?
It's nice, man. Refreshing.
Yeah, smooth, refreshing. I don't have too much to say about it. Again, as a Polak, like this is what's in my parents' house all the time, so I'm not just used to it.
It's just it's like your Molson Canadian.
Oh yeah, for sure. Honestly, I don't know if I've ever drank Molson Canadian, but like Żywiec, Etiquette, like all those Polish beers. Oh yeah.
This one, I don't drink a lot of lagers, and this doesn't really taste like Molson Canadian to me. It's like a little bit sweeter. And it tastes more European. And I don't know if I'm not a beer snob, at least I don't think, but it has that kind of like
It's got a bit more of a wheat flavor.
Yeah, like Heineken even has like a more European tasting, like I don't know. Anyways, it's good. I'm enjoying it.
Just one more thing on that topic. When I was in Poland, they do this thing where they'd have like these concentrated fruit syrups. They're intended to like mix with water, right? So like a raspberry syrup. And actually in the summer, they end up pouring that in the beers and mixing it up. So it gives it a nice little summery fruity kick. So really versatile beer.
I could dig that for sure. Yeah.
That's sweet.
All
right, Karl. One thing we like to ask our guests is, what have you been streaming lately?
Oh, man, this is such a broad question. Recently, oh man, I'm just going to sound like such a nerd here. I've been watching a lot of anime. So like on Crunchyroll, there's this anime streaming service. You know what? I'm going to name like maybe more than one thing from different streaming services.
Go for it.
Yeah, we recently crunched the numbers and like we're spending a lot on streaming services, but at the end of the day, it's still less than cable. Yeah, so I'm watching like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is an anime, and it's cool, I promise. What else? Oh man, Disney Plus got a bunch of like the Star content now, which is
it got
Fox
so
equivalent.
much better.
Yeah, it really did. So I was watching Futurama from the beginning.
Dude, I did the same thing recently.
Yep.
Yes, I noticed they have like the first 8 seasons of It's Always Sunny as well.
Yeah,
Bob's Burgers, they have 2 seasons of.
Love Bob's Burgers.
They've got the seasons, I think 9 and 10 of Bob's Burgers, and Amazon Prime has seasons 1 through 8. So you got the gamut there.
You got it all, man. What else? Oh, we picked up Crave. It's expensive, and that's what made us like sit down and crunch the numbers. And we're like, "Fuck, this is a lot." But you know what? It's good shit. It's got all the HBO stuff, and I've been watching Chappelle's show on it actually.
Nice.
Which that takes me back.
Yeah, there's a show on Crave I started. I had like Crave has the 2 levels of membership, right?
Yeah.
It has like 3.
They got Crave,
so I had
and
like
Crave Plus or something.
Yeah.
The cheap one came with my internet a year ago. So I was watching it for a while, and there's a show Barry with Bill Hader.
Oh my God, Barry's so
and
good.
I watched like 3 episodes. And I was like, this is the best show I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
I don't want to binge it. I want to space it out. And by the time I got to episode 4, they'd bumped it up to the premium subscription.
Oh no.
I was so mad because I've still only seen those episodes, but I was honestly just blown away by that show.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it.
It's a great like genre crossover. And honestly, if you're I'm going to say there's going to be theater nerds listening. It's about theater. So you'll enjoy aspects of it for sure.
Yeah.
Sweet. Carl, I'm going to suggest one to you on Netflix that Dave and I both watched.
Let's hear
It's based on a French graphic novel from the 80s.
This is called Lupin, Arsène Lupin.
If that's the French translation of Snowpiercer.
Oh, Snowpiercer. It is. No,
Lupin sounds like wolf. Something wolf.
No, they recently did. Yeah. That's based off something older. Lupin's like a master thief. But no, Snowpiercer, great choice. Have you guys seen the movie?
Have not.
No.
Bong Joon-ho.
No, I meant to. So I knew that the movie existed first, and then that the show came out like last year, and this is the second season. So I started watching the show, and then I caught up to where they were doing the weekly releases on Netflix of the second season, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a cool concept, and like, especially kind of what we're going through right now. Obviously, it's not anything.
I was gonna say, man, have some perspective.
I do have some perspective, okay, Dave, but like I just thought it was like, I don't know, like an isolated world that these people are living in that's like, I don't know, not the normal that they're used to and how they deal. Obviously they got crazier stuff going on, but no, I haven't seen the movie yet. I wanted to wait to watch the movie till I finished the show, just in case there was anything that was going to spoil it, which doesn't really make sense because it came out after the movie came out. But
I don't know what the timeline is.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure the movie is a prequel. I mean, sorry, the show is a prequel.
Oh, okay.
But again, having only seen the movie, I couldn't tell you definitively.
But at this point, I feel like I should watch the movie. I can't like avoid watching it for future TV show spoilers because it came out first. It's intended to have been seen before this, I think.
I think they're going to end up feeling like and being their own things.
Yeah.
So, you can probably never watch the movie, but if you're a fan of the show, you should watch the movie. And this director, Bong Joon-ho is the guy who directed Parasite.
Yeah,
which was the first Korean film.
I was trying to think of why that name sounded so familiar.
Yeah, but again, it's not Parasite. It's much kookier.
Okay,
just watch it. It's weird.
I have not yet seen Parasite either, which is something that I know I would love and I know I should see. I just like haven't got around to it, but I know it's on some streaming services. So
it's got to be.
We all have a list of movies like that. Man.
Yeah,
I literally have like a spreadsheet on Google Sheets. Like a to watch list because I lost track.
Yeah, that's actually pretty smart.
Yeah, and there's like a watch tab and there's a watched tab, and then I like to review them when I'm done. But I will add Snowpiercer, the TV show, to the to be watched.
Well, I got kind of what I think is a good segue here. You say you've got your list full of movies and shows to watch. Do you have like the same sort of thing for board games that like
exactly what I wanted to ask?
Games that I need to play that I haven't yet played, or is that how you figure out board games? Or like, how do you get to choose a new game that you haven't played before?
Totally. That's a great question. I do have a list. I keep it separately, but I've tried to stop feeding that list because damn it, if board gaming isn't an expensive hobby, it's not like I can just find stuff on subscription services. You got to pay the big bucks for some of these. So normally I would do things like Board Game Geeks. They'll frequently have like new stuff enter the top, 100, or they'll drop good reviews of new board games, and I'll get like ideas for stuff I'm interested in there. There's also, of course, the Board Game Reddit, which they'll frequently post about new and exciting games, and they'll have links to reviews. And then in terms of like individual reviewers, there's the Dice Tower, which is probably like the biggest name in board game reviews in terms of sheer like viewership. And yeah, they'll touch a little bit of everything. It's a good way to get ideas of what board games are out and what's good, what's interesting.
And is there any way to like sift through that kind of thing and like filter for like, I like games like this, or like?
Yeah, Board Game Geek definitely categorizes to the extreme all of their board games. So for example, if you are looking for just something like variable player powers, like that's a mechanic that you're really into, or you're looking into like asymmetric gameplay, like a really fine and granular mechanic, you click that. And it'll go ahead and it'll generate a list of every board game ranked, usually by, you can put them in whatever order you want, but you can rank them by popularity, like reviews, let's say, the best reviewed ones. Mm-hmm. And then that's a good way to know, like, okay, this game has, the these 6 mechanics I like. It is for these player counts. It is best at this player count. And here's a whole bunch of reviews, and I can download the rule book right here and now. And like that's the way to do it, I think.
So is there a site where I can go to learn the names of board game mechanics I like?
That's going to come from experience, my friend.
Well, back to what you had just said there about you can download the rule book. Are you like a rule book hound? Do you read every rule book for games you haven't played, for games that like obviously for the games that you own, you're going to read those rule books. But like, have you read rule books for games that you don't own just to see if it's something that you're going to like?
Yes, and I actually think that's great advice because, and I've done this a lot in the past, I've blind bought. I've bought based off of what, one glowing review said. And I thought to myself, this sounds great. Or let's say I really liked the theme of it. So I picked up the game and then it just never got to the table. Or it finally did get to the table and hey, turns out this game sucks. It's just, it's not objectively bad, but it's just not for me. So what I started doing is I started applying this rule for myself where check out the rule book first, check out a how to play. YouTube is great for like how to plays and like tutorials. You check those out. And if you still think you want it, then you spend the money. Because again, it's an expensive hobby and you don't want to just be slapping down, $60, $80 on games all the time.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
How, like the games are pretty pricey, and like how do you go into a store just be like, I want to buy a new board game, and you look around, you're like $100.
Yeah,
this game must be the best game ever made, and like maybe it is, but maybe it isn't.
A lot of the times it's just a whole bunch of plastic in the box, and that's the price tag.
Yeah, I guess that probably like really influences the cost of a game.
Yeah, component quality.
And materials and yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the biggest Kickstarters are so expensive, partially just because they include like great detailed miniatures. So it's basically a whole bunch of effort went into creating these beautiful little plastic miniatures. And I find that I don't care about the miniatures. They're like, there's this board game called, I got to turn around here, Mansions of Madness. And the miniatures for it are in a grocery bag somewhere because I don't care. Like it also comes with these little tokens that represent the monsters. So I just used the tokens because the board just got too cluttered,
Yeah. Now, here's a question, and maybe this is going to be like a big faux pas, and maybe I will even cut this if this is like horribly offensive to gamers and like people who create games. But could you not realistically download a rule book and watch a gameplay thing and then kind of like, you're like, I don't need to spend $100 on these miniatures. I can just use like old Apple cores or like whatever I got. I'm just saying that because I got an Apple core.
Doesn't rot.
Yeah. So you're saying proxying a game, basically.
Is that a thing?
That's the thing. It's called proxying a game. So most rule books for every game are available online, usually from the publisher's website. And if not there, then in some format it'll be available on Board Game Geek. Then the problem is going to be like cards. Let's say there's a deck of cards involved. You're not always going to find, it's not in the rule book usually, and you're not always going to find scans. But and this is like a legal gray area. There's this thing called Tabletop Simulator. You can get it on Steam, and what it essentially is like it's a physics simulator that people port board games into. So by default, it has things like chess, open source kind of things. Mm-hmm. But then people will actually import real live games. They'll take little scans of all the components, and they'll set up scripts that will like let you play this board game in a virtual space. So if you wanted to, you could proxy, you could go through the effort of making your own cards and all that. But especially with the more complicated games, it's just not going to be practical.
Yeah.
Or probably as fun even.
That
like,
too.
So a lot of the fun of a board game to me is like, there's video games out there. There's computer games. There's like all different kinds of things. But something great about playing board games to me is the tactile owning it. It's
Absolutely.
Like owning your record collection or owning your CD collection or movie collection. And
my VHSs,
Yeah. But you have it and you can play it with your hands and you can hold it and you own it, right? And that's kind of what you were saying about something earlier. The fact that you actually own this thing is different than it just being like something that you pay a subscription to. Like Netflix is something that, like you said, you spend a lot more money on this hobby. It's not like a subscription service where you just like pay and then you have like this giant
for sure.
library. But at the same time, you don't own anything on Netflix. You don't own anything, and they can go away at any time. You always have that, and you can always play it.
Yeah, for sure. And board games can and do go out of print. I own a couple board games that are no longer being produced, and the fact that I own them is, great for me.
Yeah, that's
absolutely
cool. I guess those would retain or increase in value because they become more rare over time.
Absolutely. There are some that out of print ones, especially popular properties, that are very expensive on eBay. So collectors, heads up.
So you mentioned you can find rule books online, and that made me think the challenge whenever you introduce a new game to people who haven't played it before of trying to teach the rules as quickly as possible, and then 5 minutes into the game realizing half the people don't know what they're doing. So how do you go about that? If you were to play a new game with Dylan and I that we'd never played before, do you pass the rule book around? Like, what's your go-to strategy for making sure everybody actually understands what they're about to do?
Great question. So assuming I'm the host in this scenario and the owner of the board game, I look at it as the host's responsibility to familiarize themselves to the rules to the degree that they can like teach it efficiently, effectively, and quickly. So I'm not going to pass you the rule book. If you want to flip through the rule book, that's great. But my objective as the host is going to be, I have to learn this board game in and out, so that when you guys show up, whenever it is, I can teach it to you in 10, 15 minutes, or show you like a couple of turns, like guided turns, so that 30 minutes later you guys are playing on your own without any like input from me.
Yeah, that's true. Because a lot of people, I feel like, they're like, let's have a games night. And then you go to teach them a game and they're like, I don't want to spend 20 minutes of my games night learning this game. I just want to play a game. And obviously some games are more complex than others. Yeah. And
I was just about to say the same thing. Obviously it depends on complexity. But like, you never want to hand people the rule book. Like if I'm a conductor, I'm not going to be sending the sheet music to my musicians. Well, maybe I will. This metaphor is going astray. Never mind.
I was going to say that's exactly what I would want.
That's probably pretty routine.
To make that analogy make more sense, you don't need to send the musicians the whole score. You only need to send them their part. Yeah, they only need to know what they need to play. They don't need to know what the whole piece sounds like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's my job to know have the big picture.
Yeah, you're the conductor.
Yeah.
So we mentioned some people have very different ideas of what a game is and how much they're willing to learn. So if you've got like a mixed group, how do you identify a game that you think is going to be a hit?
Great question. So I think for like a vast group, you want it to be as accessible as possible. You want to sort of target your lowest level of experience. So it's the same as if you're playing a sport, you're going to play touch football if not everyone knows how to play football, right? You're not going to go ahead and go full contact football for a random group of individuals.
Depending how much you like your friends.
Yeah. So like let's say it's a very varied group and one person has like almost never played, or let's say the vast majority of people aren't into the hardcore sit down at a table for 2.5 to 3 hours kind of board games. That's when I'd bust out something casual, something quick, maybe more social or party, like party games is what they're generally referred to as.
Right.
Now, I mean, this is probably a really hard question to answer because I would have trouble answering this if it was about a topic that I was more familiar with. But do you have like a favorite game or like a go-to game that's like good in kind of every situation that like, but isn't just like your game of life kind of like boring game that everyone's heard before, like some unique game that like, oh, anyone could play this and everyone would like it?
Yeah. Just based off of the amount of plays that I have of it, that sort of speaks to its accessibility and its ease of play. It's got to be like Codenames, I think.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
Yeah. And especially now during the pandemic, and you guys are going to touch on these topics later. So I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it has a great online implementation, which I'm hoping you guys have already been using.
We have.
Sure. Yeah, codenames.io.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, the UI is better than I'd prefer to play that over the physical game. It's just so much easier. You don't have to deal with the physical cards and shuffling, and the game sets up in like a click, you know?
It's really nice.
Yeah. So Codenames is that game that I've brought to the office. I've played with people at a belligerent party, like with beers. I've played with people at like a sit down, quiet sort of space. It's accessible, and I think it's a fantastic game.
Something I really like about that game is all the variations on it too, and you can have it kind of like fit into, like, if you're a big Harry Potter fan, you could have a Harry Potter Codenames.
Yeah,
you could.
That one is so tough, though.
Is it? I've never played it.
Oh, Doris loves Harry Potter. Listeners, Doris is my wife, so she loves Harry Potter. So we picked up Harry Potter Codenames. They have, because it's all fucking Harry Potter, they have too much in common. What are you going to say? Like magic? 8?
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Wizard,
I know very little about Harry Potter, so I'd be like Dumbledore for everything.
Yeah, you'd have to play with a bunch of people who are like all into it. You couldn't just be like, oh, this is a casual. You've seen the movies, right? Yeah, let's play this. And it's going to be like Newt Scamander. And you're like, who the fuck is that?
Yeah. No, they have way too much in common. The universe is not that vast. But if you're looking for like a version of Codenames that has a great property on top of it, check out Disney Codenames. That Disney is broad enough that you have things like Monsters Inc. to Snow White, you know? Yeah. And that edition also has words on one side and pictures on the other. So you automatically get a version of Codename pictures.
I was going to say, I also like that they have other versions of the game, like pictures, in case that maybe is better for your style, or maybe it triggers something different, or it's just a cool, like, I think we played it when we went to that cottage with you one time.
Yeah.
A picture version, and it was like, I don't even remember what kind of images are on the cards, but it was a totally different game when you're trying to play that.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Codenames is great.
So do you have like games you will never play or never recommend?
Fuck Monopoly.
Check off 2 questions there.
Yeah.
So Monopoly, like, I understand that this is a gateway game in the sense that for a lot of people, Monopoly was their first game.
Yeah.
But every experience I've had with Monopoly, even as a child, was miserable. And a lot of that actually comes from, I'm pretty sure the history of Monopoly was that the designer meant it to be a reflection of capitalism. So it's a game that was designed to be unfair. So just by design, it's meant to be unplayable in that sense. And then it's the game that everyone plays incorrectly in at least one way. Everyone gets the rules wrong. No one has. I mean, at least with the people I've played, they've never actually read the rule book. It's all just a collection of house rules, and it's like, hey, we're playing Monopoly. And it's like, no, we're not.
We're playing your version of made-up stupid Monopoly, and I don't like it.
Yep.
Well, honestly, we were going to ask you a question about that, and I have recently watched a YouTube video on Vox, and they were talking to like the U.S. Monopoly champion. And he went to like
be competitive.
There's like a world championship. He came in 3rd place, and they're just talking to him about Monopoly. And he said all these things. He's like, a lot of people don't like this game because no one plays it right. Yep. And there are rules. But I would be interested to see a bunch of people who are more like your level of gamers sit down. Everyone reads the rule book ahead of time and fully understands the game and just sit there and watch them go at it. Even to their own like misery. Like, I just want to see how it goes.
The biggest problem with Monopoly is, like Karl said, it's based to be somewhat unfair.
Oh yeah.
And the biggest way that comes across is once you start losing, there's no coming back.
There's no comeback mechanic. That's correct. Yeah.
The second you have to mortgage a property, you're done, and you just have to sit there for however long it takes until you're officially done.
8 hours.
Yeah.
That's how long.
And that's miserable.
It's a miserable experience.
I think it's Dane Cook or someone, I don't remember who. Some comedian has a joke about like, this is how every game of Monopoly ends. Just flip the table. I'm done, Grandma. Okay, you won. I don't want to play this stupid game anymore. We've been playing it for 3 weeks. Like, every time.
Yeah, and on the topic of it being competitive, even if I played Monopoly correctly, even if I played it with a bunch of people who knew the rule book, it's so luck based. Like anything that involves dice as a one of your main primary sort of like mechanics every turn is just is a crapshoot. It's hard to make that competitive. There's no skill involved when you're rolling a dice and you rolled a 12, and then I rolled a 2.
So what would you say about a game like Settlers of Catan that's massively popular and people get competitive about? It's dice based, but in a slightly different way.
Yeah, I think you can mitigate a lot of that. The fact that you get to pick your starting positions and you get to sort of like choose where you want to sit in terms of probability and resources, that changes it a lot more than just, hey, I'm going to, roll a pair of dice and move around a board. And even then, I don't know that Catan is that kind of competitive board game that I would encourage to be competitive. But
it always is, though. It's just, at least from my experience playing with Dave in university and playing with other friends of ours, I've experienced the table flip.
Oh yeah,
yeah. But
I'm not going to mention names, Derek. But if you're listening,
the thing about Catan though is that player skill is still going to shine through. Your ability to negotiate and your ability to make a good deal is what's going to differentiate a good player of Catan versus a bad player of Catan. Whereas Monopoly doesn't have that by comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like Catan's almost getting to that point of popularity where you're starting to see house rules pop up though.
Yeah. Have you played with any?
I have one friend who insists that 2 and 12 are connected. So if you roll either one and you're on either resource, you get it.
Oh, because they're just a sore loser because they build on ore and they only have 2s and 12s on them and they just want to get more resources.
Well, that's an interesting way of shoring up the low probability of 2 and 12, right? Because they're the least probable outcomes, but at least by making them binary like that, you get it twice as often.
Exactly.
Also, cool. I think a house rule is like the way that people lay the tiles sometimes. Is it's supposed to be more random, and then the like number tiles are supposed to be not random. But sometimes people like randomize or just choose how the landscape is going to look, and then also place the numbers wherever they want to. Like,
I think what's interesting with Catan is the social dynamics will vary. Like one time I played it with some people in my office and I rolled a 7, the thief. And in my group of friends, when we roll a 7, we blackmail people. We say like, I won't put this on your forest if you give me blank. And and that table that I was playing with had never seen that strategy. And they hated it and they ganged up on me.
And that can happen in that game. If you piss people off, you can get yourself screwed.
Catan does not make friends. I have always said that. Like, it pits people against each other and they hold grudges, especially if you're playing multiple games. Like, that happened 3 games ago, man. Why are you still mad about that? But
it doesn't make friends, but it does make board gamers. Because I want to praise Catan for being the new gateway game. I know I refer to Monopoly as a gateway game, but I think in this day and age, Catan is that board game that people play and they say like, oh my God, this is great. And maybe I want to get into some more board games. And in fact, that was my gateway game.
Me too.
Yeah.
I would say for me, like obviously I grew up playing Monopoly and playing Jenga and playing just like other just games that you have at your house that your parents have. Like I've got like a game of Scrabble from my grandpa that was published in the 60s. And that's the game that I grew up playing. But when I started playing Catan, I was like, oh, there are other games out there that are way cooler than these. And
this is what board games can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked a little when we were discussing how to kind of research new games about board game mechanics.
Yeah.
So what are some common mechanics that people who like board games have likely used and enjoyed, but want to know how to identify?
That's a great question. Yeah, Board Game Geek, I'm going to sound like a shill for them, but honestly, they're a great resource. So let's say the game that you fell in love with is Catan. You look up on Catan on Board Game Geek, and it has two things. It'll list all the mechanics, one, but B, it will, or rather, one and B. Two,
You're like Buzz from Home Alone.
Yeah. It will actually recommend similar board games. So like there's a little section where they give you like, I think 8 recommendations that people who like Catan also like. So that's one way to sort of explore that horizon, widen your horizons. In terms of a mechanic that people like, that's tough to say. Like I think I might have to pick something from Catan just because it is popular like that. Maybe like a lack of player elimination or even just the bartering aspect. That social aspect that Catan has where you can sort of trade resources and, make deals. Honestly, I think that's a lot of what makes it special. And I don't know the name of that mechanic offhand. It would probably be a negotiation or something. And if that's the one you like, again, just look it up and you can find great examples of similar games.
That's cool. Yeah, I really like that in the game too, is like you can kind of take advantage in certain ways by doing that. Like maybe you don't you're really on terrible resources, but yeah, you're a good negotiator and you can make it sound like it's a great way for them. And if they're maybe a little bit less experienced, but maybe that leads me to the next point. Like, is a cardinal sin of gaming, like board gaming, taking advantage of people who are less experienced in the game, or is that just part of it? You're like, I know how to play the game. I told you how.
That's just competition, man.
Yeah, that's going to vary person to person. Dylan's a dick, so he's going to do it. But
yeah,
personally, and this goes back to what I mentioned about experience level. You don't want to turn someone off a board game. Yeah. Or off of board gaming in general, right? If this is someone's first time playing something and you make them have a miserable time at it, you just lost a potential board game companion, right? Mm-hmm. So, pick your audience kind of thing.
Yeah. So you're obviously somebody who not only cares tremendously about board games, but owns a fair number of them. So if you're hosting a board game night and you have people over, what are things people do that drive you nuts? Like, are there things where you watch somebody, whether it's like having a drink too close to the game or something that just like stresses you out?
Oh, you nailed it.
The drinks, that's the biggie.
Well, that's one, but it'll depend on the game. I try to loosen up if it's, again, something like a party game, like code names. All right, fine. It's not expensive. I think you can buy it for like $20 these days. But then, you have like $100 plus board game. And when I bust one of those out, all right, everyone wash your hands first. No chips at the table. No drinks at the table. Oh, you just had some chips? All right, wash your hands. Or what I like to do in those sessions is I like to break for lunch or whatever. If it's a full day session, we break for food, we wash our hands, and we go back to gaming.
Do you have a lot of like games night or like in normal times, I guess, like a lot of times where it's a Saturday and you'd be like, okay, I'm having 5 people over and this is what we're doing. We're playing this one game or we're going to play several games or like a regular board game crew.
Yeah, and it becomes harder and harder, as you guys know, when you get older, when you have a kid, it gets harder and harder to organize these sort of things. So, but definitely before the quarantine, there is a regular group of friends, and it always depends on what I intend to play. So like, I have a game that's max 4-player count. I know that I can only get 4, but if I'm aiming for 6, I know I have to sort of broaden my net a bit. But what I like to do is plan in advance, send them tutorials and the rulebook if they want to glance through it. But like I said, I'm the teacher. I'm there to like make sure that they learn it quickly and have a good time. So I tell them, these are the board games we plan to play. Be ready. Be in this mindset for like a war game, let's say, if it's a hardcore board game group, and yeah, prep as much as you feel like you need to, and I'll do the rest. I'll shore up wherever you're missing in terms of the rules, and then we meet up and we have a good time. I like to do it for as many hours as possible because, again, this isn't going to happen every week,
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess it's really true about you need to know who you're playing with and what they're and get them like into that mindset. If you're like, we're getting together and we're playing board games, we're not going to go outside and we're not going to go like hang out no, we're playing board games. It's not a pool afternoon. This is a board game afternoon, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You depending on what I want to play, I can't invite just anyone, you know? Like it's got to be, I got to be realistic about the expectations there.
Yeah. Well, that being said, I'm just going to mention what we do for the listeners out there. So Dave and I have been, since the start of COVID, we've been doing a games night with my wife, Emily, and two friends who you know, Katie and Kelsey.
Yeah.
And basically every week or every 2 weeks, we get together on Zoom and we play a board game or mostly just kind of chat. To be honest, a lot of
Usually
it is just
a couple beers and chatting until someone says, "So we're gonna play a game?"
Yeah,
that's the beauty of board gaming, though. It's the social aspect. It's the social situations that it creates.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going with this. Like, what to you is like the real benefit of having a board game night, or just like the importance of a games night with your friends? Is it the social aspect? Is it learning new games? Is it or all the above? I don't know.
Yeah. Great question. And honestly, as an avid board game, collector and player, for me, like every box is a unique experience. Part of it is because you don't have them often, right? But it's every time you get together and you have like a really memorable night with code names, or it could be something like code names. It could be something like, Blood Rage, whatever. But like it creates so many memories because board games are just uniquely different, in my opinion. Like, and it's hard to bottle up this feeling or express this feeling, but they're simultaneously like social, but also competitive and strategic, but also they could be dumb. And I think board games are just a wonderful creation of humanity. I don't know. Maybe my beer is getting to me.
No, but it's true. Like I honestly saw this other YouTube video a while back. I think it's this YouTuber named Mark Rober, who's very popular. He's like a science guy, and he was interviewing some professor at University of Waterloo. They have a program there, which is a board game development program where they teach you how to develop board games, how to develop just games in general, and the psychology behind them, and the point of board games, I guess. And it was just like board games are a lot really more cool. Yeah, it's a lot more to, I don't know, than just sitting around and dicking around with your friends. It's like an experience that's not like really anything else you do with your friends. And maybe it's kind of similar to like athletics and like sports, but in a totally different capacity, because like for a lot of things like sports, you need to have physical skills and strength in order to do those things, or like hone those skills. But for board games, you don't necessarily need to have those. It's a lot more suited to personality.
Yeah, everyone's a lot more equal around a board game table than they are on a field, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, even like I've got friends who I golf with regularly, and you get a lot of the same benefits as far as that social aspect, the competition.
Sure, and to that point, I would consider golf a game.
Yeah,
in a loose aspect, it's board gaming and sports games, right?
For sure. The difference is there's a lot more to it than just teaching someone the rules.
Yeah.
Like the guys I golf with, we've all been playing, since we were kids. And there's a developed set of skills. Whereas, a board game, something like Catan, you can teach someone the rules, and by their second or third game, they might have a decent chance of winning.
Yeah, absolutely.
And whereas something like golf or sports, you don't have there's a bigger barrier to entry.
That's fair. Yeah,
I guess is how I'd put it.
And I think that makes board games a little bit more like accessible too, because when you win a board game, Karl, why don't you talk about that? About when you win a board game for the first time, if you've played it with friends who maybe they've played it a couple times.
Oh, you got to put me on the spot like that. I've never won a board game in my life.
Then you picked the wrong hobby, man.
I didn't say I'm good at them. I said I love them. Yeah. Honestly, like I said, it's like a great equalizer. It's more than anything beginner's luck. It feels like it's a thing in board games, you know, like someone can try something for the first time and just kick your ass at it. And even though I've played 10 times, I might lose to a complete newbie because, you know, they just see something that I didn't about it. And that's the beauty of board games. People can interpret things and see strategies and see things that you didn't see. And next thing you know, you're having a great time getting your ass kicked.
We've talked about games that are the first games you learn. Monopoly, now maybe Catan, but also chess or checkers. Checkers probably the precursor usually to chess.
Yep.
Do you have a game that you want to teach your son? For the listeners, Karl has a now 1-year-old little baby boy, and has he been interested in board games? Can you tell yet, or is there anything you want to teach him when he is at that point where it's more comprehensible for him?
I 100%. One of my first thoughts when having a kid was like, I can't wait to play board games with you. So I've already given this some thought, and I'm gonna have to start small. So I'm gonna have to start, as much as I hate like random chance things, you know, rolling dice. It's gonna be something like Chutes and Ladders, aka Snakes and Ladders, or maybe even just Go Fish, something that will introduce them to the concept of like, you know, rolling a dice, moving a piece around a board, holding cards, you know, having a goal or an objective and working towards it, like in Go Fish.
Yeah, literal baby steps.
Yeah. Literal baby steps. Because what separates a complex board game from a simple one is just more mechanics. That's really all it is. Mm-hmm. So you got to start small.
That's really interesting, actually, because when you say that, I think about the games I played as a kid, whether it was card games, board games, whatever, and how many of those skills or mechanics you learn that you can use in, like, you can combine about 5 or 6 of them into one board game I might play now.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's really it.
That's really cool.
Yeah, there's this really daunting board game that I was scared of for a while called Twilight Imperium, and it takes like 8 hours to play. It's optimal at 6 players. And it's got like a 26-page rule book and then a rules reference, which is another like 30 pages.
Oh my God.
And like, I was worried about this game, but when I sat down and I learned it, honestly, it has more mechanics than the less complicated games. That's all it really boils down to. Every game is digestible. It's just going to take more bites, more chews. Mm-hmm. That's it.
So obviously we've acknowledged a little bit that we're in a pandemic, and I know there's people like me. I live alone, and I've got a shelf of board games that's collected a fair bit of dust the last year. Yeah. And I know you and Dylan are both married, and with the exception of your 1-year-old son, you know, there's probably 2 of you in the house capable of playing a complicated board game right now. Yeah. So what are some game ideas or suggestions for people who live alone or maybe in a couple and can't connect with other groups? Are there things out there that are kind of bridge that gap to board gaming?
Absolutely. Before I start, Doris is not as big into board games as I am. Like, she can play some board games. I think Catan might be her limit though, like her upper limit. She's played some other more casual Euros, but I can't really get her to play some of the more complicated board games I have.
Euros.
Sorry. Settlers of Catan is what's called a Euro game. The idea, they technically are German origin, but the category of game became known as Euros, and as opposed to American games. And a lot of what differentiates Euro games are things like there is no player elimination. Most of the time you're trying to score points. It's like social and lighthearted. Player interactions are more positive. You're not really like attacking each other. So things like Seven
just
Wonders.
The opposite of Monopoly.
That's correct.
So just a big commentary on maybe the world.
Yeah, I was going to say.
For what it's worth, there's another category of gaming called Ameritrash. So,
can you give us a couple examples of Ameritrash?
Yeah.
Or are you going to get some game developers coming for you?
No, I think it's like one of those. You can look it up. I'm not going to name any names.
Okay. We'll let themselves dig their own holes by being what they are.
No, they're great. It's like, you know, the different, it's like you can still like pulpy, B movies. You can still like, action movies. They don't all have to be Casablanca,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But sorry, I kind of cut you off there about Therese and her enjoyment of games.
So yeah, I mean, and especially right now in the pandemic, board games have had a big boom. I know I'm trying to get a hold of some things that are just selling out quick, and the things that are selling out quick in particular are solo games. There's a big one that I wouldn't recommend as an entry game or a gateway game, but it's called Arkham Horror, the card game. This is typically, you can play it solo. It plays great with 2, but it can even play 3 or 4. So right now in the pandemic, it is like flying off the shelves because people are looking for those kinds of experiences. So a lot of board games, maybe not necessarily the most popular ones, but a lot of board games are playable at 1 and 2 players. And the kind of thing that I might play with Therese is she likes mystery stuff. So there is a whole genre, and it's best encapsulated in one series of games called the Unlock games. And
I've played some of those. Yeah, they're great.
And they're basically escape rooms in a box.
Yeah.
They simulate an escape room experience, so they're not necessarily replayable. But
I think we played one with you at that cottage that one time.
We did, yeah.
Yeah,
and
that's
the game you basically throw out after because you can only play it the one time.
So there are 2 versions of that. One includes throwable like components that you literally destroy. The other one is called Exit. Okay, so the two main players in this escape room genre is Exit the game and Unlock. And Exit the game is literally playable once. Like, it asks you to destroy components, to cut cards in half and stuff like that. So once you're done with it, you just have to throw the box out. And that sounds wasteful and terrible, but it's a really unique experience. And then Unlock is actually just a deck of cards, and it simulates the escape room experience by also having an app on the side. So sometimes you'll be asked to type in a passcode, or it'll involve a little app game that you have to play on your phone as part of the escape room.
Yeah, and there's sound clips, and they'll even have just like really intense music the whole time.
Yep. Yeah, it's intense, and they're a great experience, and they're playable by honestly anyone.
That's cool. And then, like, just in general, so there's solo and couple games. Do you have any recommendations of some good couple games? Because I don't have a lot of games at home right now, and sometimes I'm like, Emily, do you want to play a game? And we don't really have a lot that are good 2-player. It's like Scrabble or that's it.
I'm going to pander to you guys a little bit. There is something called Disney Villainous, where it's variable player powers. You're basically controlling different Disney villains, and everyone has their own objective. So you get to be like Ursula or Jafar or like Hades. And I'm pretty sure it plays at 2 players. Cool. And it's a nice little gateway game, not too difficult. Check that one out, maybe.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what are some board games, like if you were just to name 2 or 3 board games that casual to moderately serious board gamers might enjoy? What are some new ones out there that we should check out?
Great question. One that's really been popular recently, and I've introduced it as a gateway game is Azul. And there's different versions of it, but it's like a set collection type game. You're basically it's hard to describe these rules right now, but you're just collecting like sets of tiles in order to get points. And that sounds boring, but like check out Azul. I think it's great. And then another Euro it's not actually newer, but it's not as popular as something like Catan is Carcassonne. So it's based off of the Carcassonne region of Spain, France. And it's a tile placement game. So basically you're drawing little square tiles off of a deck, and then you're forming like a map that's constantly growing bigger as you're placing more of these tiles. And every time you place one, you have an opportunity to place a worker on a feature of that tile. And the purpose of that is to get to basically score points. So because it's a Euro, it doesn't have any elimination. It's all about gathering points. The rule book's like 3 or 4 pages. It's great. Check out Carcassonne.
Nice.
That's great.
Have you played the game? This is a little topical. Pandemic.
Oh yeah, Pandemic.
Is it a good game?
Pandemic's a great one.
I like it. Yeah.
Part of what makes Pandemic great is it's actually player versus, well, I mean, this is more of a video game term, but it would be considered player versus environment. So you're not actually, your friends aren't your opponents. Your opponent is the game itself.
Okay.
And that's what makes it great as an introductory game, because you're either going to lose together or you're going to win together, but your friends aren't shitting on you. So like the whole
so you're
time,
like, it's like a team game.
It's exactly. It's a team game. You're trying to beat, the pandemic. You're trying to beat the virus, and because of that, it's just more accessible. Like there's no feel bad moments. Like you're gonna win it together or you're gonna lose together, and that's it.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to play that game like right now, but maybe it's even better to play it right now. Maybe you feel like you're like actually like winning.
You're inspired.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure Pandemic does support a 1-player game and a 2-player game. So going back to that couples question, check out Pandemic. Yeah, there's other cooperative games in that vein. Pandemic's the biggest one for sure.
Okay, we're getting a little short on time here, but I just kind of want to ask one more closing question here. Yeah. How many board games do you think you own?
I almost opened with that. I'm glad we got to it.
Yeah. Okay. If we're not counting, if we're just talking like individual games, it's not that many. It's like 75 maybe.
I think I own 7.
But if we're counting expansions, then that's going to go into like 200 plus. Just
wow.
Some companies are very expansion happy, and I'm happy to buy them. So.
So we said earlier before you joined us that like if you look up your name online, you might not necessarily find you online as like a board game person. I don't
personality.
Think. No. But do you have any sort of things you'd like to plug while you're on here in general? And if you don't, we don't have to keep this in here. But
I actually appreciate that. I don't have any online presence. I have nothing to plug, but I appreciate that you're giving that opportunity to people.
Yeah, no worries. We'll just plug Tiski and Javiette's beer then.
That's right.
How about that?
Board Game Geek.
Board game. I promise they're not paying me.
Yeah, Board Game Geek and the Board Games Reddit, I guess, are good places to go and check out things that maybe you want to, if you want to learn more about board games. And
good places to start.
Yeah.
Good places to start.
That's great.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us and just chatting with us about board games and what you do. And it's been awesome. It's been really fun.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Anytime.
And we'll hit you up one time to get you in one of our board games. You're the host, though.
Yeah. You got to teach us the rules.
We're playing Twilight Imperiums. Free up 8 hours.
So it's just going to be the 3 of us.
Optimal. That's 6, Dave.
Well, thanks again to Karl Kwiatkowski for joining us this week and giving us such good insight onto like what it is to kind of be a board game collector, how to choose new board games, how to like have a board game night with your friends, how to basically be a leader when it comes to choosing board game. This guy, that really made me want to have another board game night sometime soon. So hopefully that is in our horizons.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we forget all of the ideas and suggestions he gave us.
Exactly.
Well, next week we have a special guest, Martin Van Helden, who will be coming on to discuss everything you need to know about job interviews. Martin's been a recruiter for a number of years, and he's going to join us to share some insights on resumes, cover letters, interview etiquette, all those different things you've heard, forgotten. Some of them you've remembered, some of them you've probably fucked up. So Martin's going to be here to help fill in those gaps.
Yeah, some of them you might have never even learned. So
yeah, that's very true, especially if it's been a long time since you've been through the job application process. Mm-hmm. Things change quickly.
Yeah. Well, you can find us on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and anywhere else that you look for your podcasts.
Be sure to give us a follow, like, and give us a rating on iTunes if you liked it. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes, and we'll see you again at the Grown-Ups Table.